So in this video, we're going to go over how to outsmart negative thoughts once and for all so that you can save your business. So here's what we'll cover: where these negative thoughts come from, what I mean by outsmarting them, how to outsmart them, and how outsmarting them can save your business. So make sure to take notes in the comments to help bring clarity to yourself and also to all the others that are watching this video. So first, where do these negative thoughts come from? So the first thing to realize is that we're made of multiple parts or resource states, right? So you have the family part, who you are when you're with your family. You have the business part with a little suit and tie here, right? That looks terrible, but you have the lover part, so the person you are with your partner. You have the friend part, the person you are when you're hanging out with your friends. You have the hobby part, the part that likes to, whether it's draw or create or do whatever it is that is your hobby. Then there's also the childhood part, right? So that's the part of you that loves nostalgia, loves like the things from your past, old cartoons and movies you used to watch, and etc., right? So these are all different parts that are within us. And these parts, they're physically represented by neural pathways in the brain. So if you had the brain here, you would have all of these little pathways going in and out, connecting to each other, right? So the childhood part might be represented by this bundle of pathways, or your hobby part might be this bundle. And these parts are created by continuous behaviors. So when you're a child and something happens to you, and your behavior as a coping mechanism is to get silent and not talk, or it's to get angry or things like that. All these different little coping mechanisms that we have, as we do them over and over again, we're actually creating these bundle of nerve connections, and we create that part. So even like learning a skill, when you're learning a bike, you have a part of you that is that part that learned how to ride that bike. And it might be represented by this bundle of nerves. And it could also be the same part that was the childhood part that liked to have fun or have adventure. So we have all these resources and parts. And so they're physically created through dendrite and axon growth, right? So that's what I was talking about when I talk about those neural pathways. They're dendrite and axons that grow and connect to each other. And then that process is called neuroplasticity. So when you hear about like a growth mindset and how people can learn things even at older ages, that is because of neuroplasticity, which just means that your brain can continue to grow these connections and you can continue to learn and get smarter. So these resource states can be wounded, right? So you can have a part that is wounded with fear. You can have a part that's wounded with rejection, right? You can have a part that's wounded with disappointment, or a part that's wounded with confusion. And to explain what I mean by wounded with confusion, confusion is like when you have something happen to you and you're like, why me, why me, why me? That's wounded with confusion. And so all these parts can be triggered and become conscious, right? So you can only have one part conscious at one time. So if this wounded part gets triggered by something that happens to you today, this wounded part will come to the conscious, and then all of a sudden you'll feel that fear, you'll feel that rejection, that disappointment, right? So that's why we get triggered when we say we get triggered. We get triggered by something happening to us that makes one of those parts come to the conscious mind. And so often what they're really trying to do is protect you from their wound, right? So if a wounded part comes up, they might tell you to not try, right? Because of the fear of failure, to give up, to procrastinate, to tell you you're not good enough, to tell you it's not worth the effort. It's because these wounded parts don't want to continue feeling that wound. And they feel that by you doing whatever it is you're trying to do is going to make that wound bigger or make it worse or make them feel it more. But all resource states are there for a reason, to help in some way. But their wounds make their help seem not very helpful to us, right? So this creates conflict between your inner parts. Because one part might be the one that wants to win, but your wounded part fears you'll lose. One part wants to try, but your wounded part makes you procrastinate. One part wants to continue, but your wounded part wants you to give up. So, what do I mean when I say outsmarting your negative thoughts? Well, by outsmarting them, you're actually healing that wounded part, changing its way of supporting you, or changing its job so a better fit part supports you. Here's a part with some muscle. Right? So, how do we outsmart your negative thoughts and wounded parts? So first, close your eyes so that you can go internal, right? You name that part of you that feels the wound. And you ask that part of you to show you all the times that it felt that wound. And as you go through, you'll start seeing images or videos of all the different times that you felt that wound. What you want to do is go through those times until you reach the very first time. Usually it's when you're a child. Sometimes it could be when you're older. But more often than not, it's when you're a child. So if it's an image, make that image into a video. If it's in black and white, make it color and vivid. Then jump into that scene. And have that wounded part talk to and express its feelings towards the person that wounded that part. So in that scene, you have that wounded part who got wounded that first time. And what we want to do is allow that wounded part to discharge all of that emotional energy by expressing itself towards the person or the people or the thing. It could be a dog, it could be the ocean, right? It could be whatever it is that wounded that part. And just express all that emotion and feeling at those people, places, or things that made it feel that wound. Because you allow it to discharge all of that emotional energy. Then have that part change the scene to make it go in a better direction. So it's almost like we're going back in time and changing what happened in that scene. So now a good thing happens in that scene, right? Because we let this part know that it has the power to control that scene, because this is no longer happening now. This is something in the past. This is a memory that can be altered and changed. Then what you do is you highlight that scene. So choose a border color that you know is to let you know that this scene has been edited. Then you ask the wounded part if it would like to change its name to something more positive now that the scene is different. So maybe this part that used to call itself fear or loneliness now wants to be something more supportive, because now it's in a good scene. Now it's in a good scene. Maybe it now wants to be called, for example, it wants to be called support. Or it wants to be called friendship once the scene changes. Then, what you want to do is describe how you'd like to feel in those situations where fear used to show up, or where loneliness used to show up, wherever that child part used to show up. How would you like to feel instead? Like, what stronger feeling? You want to feel more confident. You want to feel more assured in yourself. Whatever that is, once you describe it, you figure out what part it was that just described that. So maybe it's the part that says, I want to be more confident. Right? Put that muscle back in there. And so then you say, okay, what is your name part? Maybe the part's name is strong. Right? So you name that part that answered. Then you ask that part if it will handle the situations from now on so that the formerly wounded part, this guy here, can stay in their new scene and enjoy themselves. Because usually if this is like a more childlike part, it's better to let it have fun in the scene, have things better for them, enjoy themselves, while a more adult, mature part, like strong in this case, takes over when those situations pop up, when those triggers pop up. And then you just think all the parts and breathe in that new strong part, right? Then you want to test it too. So you want to test it to make sure that when you're in that situation again, where originally the wounded part showed up, imagine that scene again of whatever it is that triggered it in the first place, and then imagine having strength there as the part. And notice how you feel different. That's how you test your work, right? So, I've put this into the acronym outsmart to make it a little bit easier. So first, for O in outsmart, you open your inner world. But you do that by closing your eyes. So you open that inner world because you shut out the external world. Understand, that's the you, who's hurting. So that's naming that part that feels that wound. The T in outsmart is traveling back to the first time they got hurt. So that's going through the scenes, making it more vivid, finding that first scene, making it more lively, making a video, jumping into that scene is S for step into the memory. M in outsmart is make your feelings heard, right? So that part that's wounded, allow it to express itself towards all the people, places, things that wounded it in the first place. The A in outsmart is to adjust the story, right? So that's changing the scene, making it better for that part, and putting that border around the scene, knowing that that's a scene that's been edited. The R in outsmart is replace the old feeling with a new resource or part, right? So once that part is healed, it's in that scene, it gets to enjoy itself, find the part that is willing to take the wounded part's place whenever a situation that would trigger you happens, right? Then T is to take in, breathe in the new you, and I could also say T is for test. Test that triggering situation in your imagination with that new part, and make sure you feel different. Make sure that you do feel that strong part with you. All right, so how does outsmarting your negative thoughts and wounded parts actually save your business? So, making sure you have the right part to take on tasks. So that's an important piece, right? So if you had a task that was triggering you with procrastination, with some kind of fear, now you have the right part in place to actually take on that task. And make sure you stay positive overall, right? And a positive mindset helps you see opportunities all around you. Because when you're in a negative mindset, you see the opposite. It's like, oh, everything's a challenge, nothing's going to work, and then you never take the actions or the opportunities, and you can't even see them because your reticular activating system, which is a system that like when you say, oh, I want to look for red cars, and all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere. That's the reticular activating system in your brain that's allowing you to see all of that. So when you're in a positive mindset and you're like, oh, I believe there's opportunities everywhere, you start seeing those opportunities everywhere. But if you're negative and shut off, you're not going to see them even when they're right in front of you because of the brain, the reticular activating system. That's your RAS, reticular activating system in your brain. So it also helps you stay consistent, right? Because if you're positive, you're taking the actions and you're not falling back to procrastination, fear, and all of that. It helps you to continue even through quote unquote failures, because then it lets you see failures as just tests. They're just tests to see what works, what doesn't work, and then you continue iterating on that system. But if you're negative, you're gonna be like, you give up. You're like, all right, it didn't work. Next, move on to something else. Start again, fail. Next, okay, move on to something else. It also helps you enjoy the process, because if you enjoy the process, you're more likely to stick to it and be consistent and enjoy it. And by enjoying it, you actually want to do more of it. It helps you enjoy your business better. Also makes you more efficient, because now you see all the opportunities. You're consistent. You see failures as tests, and you also just enjoy all of it. So it's more efficient. Also, if you do want more help, you could click the link in the pinned comments or the description to help you reclaim 5+ hours a week in your business, overcome that internal resistance between your parts, take guilt-free vacations while you're scaling your business, all without your business falling apart.